Good morning. It's been a couple of days now. It's Thursday, and this box was delivered last night. And when I checked the message with it, it said I only have until Friday to return it. So I'm coming out today to make sure that this fits. It looks like the same design, but I have to make sure it fits. And while I'm out here, I get a little jump on it. I'm still waiting for the 3 bolts to be delivered. As I mentioned, those other bolts were pretty rounded out. I'm going to clean this out today. I'm going to clean the surface up over here on the knuckle. Clean this up a little bit. I'm going to put some never sees on it once I clean it up. And to do this part of the job, I'll be using gloves, a face shield, some brake cleaner, brush, the never sees, rag. I'm using a disc grinder with a flap disc for the outside. I don't want to take too much of it off. This might be a little too coarse, so I have to go careful with this. And I have a drill with a brush, and I have this other brush too. This will be to get on the inside over here. So I'm going to just clean this up. Not going to video doing that. Nothing exciting about it. And hopefully those 3 bolts will be delivered tomorrow, and I could put this back together and get this job done with. All right, and this is how I finished up. A disc grinder with the flap disc on it. I used the drill with this wire wheel. I cleaned up here as much as I could. I end up using a brush. Use a toothbrush to wipe out the dust in there. And I used a couple of files. I used these files to knock off any burrs that were over here. You can see this is pretty marked up from when I used the chisel to get that hub off. Nothing I could do about that but getting this as flat as I could. I didn't want to take too much off the surface. So you can see there's still a little bit rust here, but that's not hurting anything. Inside, this was pretty corroded. This is pretty well pitted. I used that wire wheel. I used sandpaper, and I used this rat tail file, or if you have a file from your chainsaw, just to knock off the burrs that were in here. I wanted to be careful not to change any of the diameter that's in here. As tight as it is, I don't think it'd make a difference, but just to be safe, I didn't want to change anything on it. See over here, I still have a little bit of rust, but it's pretty smooth. This is just pitted. Nothing I can do about that, unless I just ground that metal all the way down, and that wouldn't serve any purpose. I was going to put the anti-seize on it until the part came in, but I decided to hold off on it because it's supposed to come in on Friday. Maybe it'll come a day sooner, maybe a couple of days later. Again, the parts, I'm waiting for the 3 bolts. And I don't know if I put the anti-seize on it now, if it rained or if it got damp out, if it would hold any moisture. Before I install that hub, I'll hit it with the wire wheel one more time, wipe it out with a rag, put the anti-seize on it, and then proceed from there. Right now I still have this caliper hanging up, and this is not a brake installation video, but I do want to share a tip with you before you install the brakes. I have to work from behind the camera just to make sure I stay in focus. This is the bracket that holds the caliper on, and a couple things here. These pins have to slide in and out. You can see this is pretty stiff. It's not moving. This is where the bolts go in, and inside of here there's pins. They should easily slide. This is a little stiff. This one here, the way it should be. If you have your pairs and they're wearing uneven, it's a good chance that these pins aren't sliding the way they should. Take care of this. You pull this out. Okay, you can see this had the grease on it, but I'm going to clean this off. If this rubber should come off, it just slides right back in there again. The cylinder in here is pretty dry, although there was a lot of grease on here. That's one of the tips I want to share with you. I'm going to clean this off, and I've used anti-seize on it before. Just check the manual. I don't know if this is a recommendation. I have this CRC brake caliper and grease synthetic. This is what I use on the pins, but I've used anti-seize on it before too. I'm not recommending this, I'm just saying that I've used it before. So if you don't have the grease, at least put something on there to let this slide. The next order of business are these clips. This I'm going to clean off on the wire wheel, and I'm going to put that brake caliper grease on it, and there's one on this side also. And you want this clean because your pads slide in and out on this. You don't want the pads getting hung up. So anything you could do to keep those pads where they can move freely will save your brakes. When you step on the brake and that pad closes, if it doesn't push back out, you're wearing that pad out. If these two pins aren't moving evenly, then what's happening? One side of the pad's being pushed in, and the other side of the pad isn't being fully pushed in, so you get that uneven wear. So I'm going to take care of this now, and I'll have this part ready for when those 3 bolts come in. One less thing I have to do for that day. I'm doing this off camera. For now, that's it, until I get the 3 bolts in so I can finish the installation of that hub. Today we have some good news. The 3 bolts I was waiting for came a day early. I didn't know they were in my mailbox all this time. I was expecting them tomorrow. And the link for these bolts will be in the description down below. From a company called Hicks. They came without any Loctite on them. Normally, the new bolts come with some Loctite, making sure they fit into this hub. And they don't. They don't fit. That's a disappointment. I thought I was going to install this hub today, but I even contacted the seller to make sure they would fit this. They said absolutely, and it absolutely doesn't fit. Guess I'm going to have to wait another couple of days. Okay, the windup is I can't get these bolts. I called up the independent auto parts stores in the area. They don't carry them. They can't even order them. I called the dealership. Their parts department is closed. I'm going to use the original bolts going in, and if I can't talk into specifications, I'm just going to have to wait for the dealership to open up. It's getting late. I want to get this done, and I got the torque specifications from a Chilton's book at the library. Couldn't find it anywhere online. The only thing I got online was for this nut that goes on the axle. That's 151 foot-pounds. And the bracket for the caliper, I couldn't find that, not even in the book, and the auto parts store couldn't even look it up. I'm going to snug that tight. If you're doing this, give it your best shot to look up the specifications. I'll give you what I have, and now I'm just going to get started with this. You can see I have anti-seize. I painted it in here. I slid this hub on a couple times just to make sure it fit okay. Got all the rust out of the splines over here. There was a lot of rust in the splines. You have this anti-dust shield. You want to put that on. Now, I could clip this on beforehand, but I'm just going to put it on so if it moves around, I'm not putting any pressure or snipping that wire. You still can see, John?
Yep.
Lining up with the holes. So we wanted this to go roughly, this is it. What I'm having difficulty is lining up the hole in the hub with the hole on the knuckle. There we go. Is it in focus? Mm-hmm. The best bolt that came out, when I say the best bolt, the one that was least marred up, I'm putting in the most difficult spot to get it out of. And this bolt requires a 13mm socket. The one that was really marred up, I'm putting on the bottom, on the outside. This was the easiest one to get out. So I'll put it in the easiest spot to get out of. I'll clean all these out. Now this bolt's going in okay. The question's going to be if it ever has to come out again. See, the concern I have, I might not be able to torque it. You gabish. This is a hard one to get, this one here. I think I got the wrong one in there.
Grandpa, do you want me to get it?
No, thanks, bud. Okay. I think I got the wrong one in there. Beep, 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 beep. Okay. You gotta shut the...
You want me to?
Hit the top button, yeah. I was struggling to get this all together, but I finally got it on. I have the dust shield on, the 3 bolts in behind. I have them all snugged. Now I'm going to torque them to the specifications, which is 96 foot-pounds. So they're all snugged, and now I'll just torque them down. Now this is torqued. This is torqued to specifications. The 3 bolts are torqued to specifications. I have to put this clip on back here, but I'm not sure if this wire is going to be in the way, so I just have it there for now. Now we're going to put the rotor on. Wipe it down. Okay, get this on here. And there we go. All right. With the rotor in place, now it's time to put this bracket on. This bracket holds the caliper, which we still have hanging here. It gets bolted on these 2 tabs right here. As far as the torque for these bolts, I couldn't find it, so I'm going to make it as tight as I could and take it from there. I even called the shop to see if they would have it, and they gave me an approximate. So I'm not going to say what that approximate was, because I'm not sure if that's right. So I'm getting the bolts through here. Getting a little messy. And I do have Loctite on here. And a little wiggle, a little jiggle, and we get it in. And for these 2 bolts, you can use a 15mm socket or a 19/32. If anybody should come across the torque specifications for this, post it in the comment down below. There's a little bit of reach back here. These lines in the way. I'll take this down. Okay, and the reason for this being tied, I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning, because you don't want to put pressure on this hose. Snapping that hose or stretching it out. Okay, just leave that like that. Hold it with my knee. Get this piston back here. See. So you have an idea what I'm doing back here. The bottom bolt was a clear shot. This one you have the brake line and the ABS line, which I still have to connect. I have it there, but it's not snapped in yet. Okay. Once I get this snug, I'm just going to put a lot of pressure on it, and I'm going to do the same for the bottom one. Okay, that one's good. Okay, I got that on pretty tight. Now for the brake pads. As I mentioned, I'm not changing these pads as they're in pretty decent shape. This one goes on the inside. When you step on the brake and you hear squeaking, it's hitting this piece of metal here. This is a warning to let you know that the brake pad is worn down and it's kind of past the time to change it. Here's one. And here's the other one. There we go. And now the caliper goes on. Might be a little tight. I might have to push the pins in. Yeah. I'm going to have to push these back in a little bit. I'll be back. Just in case. Alright, what I would normally do to get these pistons in is use the old brake pad and a C-clamp. Tighten down the C-clamp, it pushes the pistons in. Now, if you're changing your brake pads, you want to go under the hood, go to where the reserve is, where you would add brake fluid, open that up and maybe take some brake fluid out, because as these pistons come out, and if you added any brake fluid to it, when you push this back to get the new pads in, that fluid's going to come out. It looks like my battery is down to 5%. This camera's going to go off soon. I want to point out the two bolts that go in here. They require a 14mm socket. I have Loctite on it, and when you tighten these down, I normally snug it down, but if you want the specs, according to Chilton's, that's 32 foot-pounds for the bolts that go in here. They don't have to be extremely tight because they're just holding this. This has to slide back and forth so the pads can slide back and forth. I'm going to put these bolts in, torque them down, and I'll be back. All right, it's all together now. All the bolts are torqued down to the right specification, with the exception of this. This is just torqued really tight because I don't have the spec on that one. Brake line's okay. The ABS wire is connected back to it. Make sure you remove the wire or the bungee cord that you had holding up the caliper. Now it's ready to put the wheel on. Another little tip here: if you have a large tire or you have a truck tire, it's a little heavy to lift up, jack up the vehicle just enough to get the tire onto it. Put a little block of wood on the bottom, roll it up, and that's that much less you have to lift. So I'm going to get this tire on now. Right up the holes. Now the car's being supported by the jack and the jack stand. And if you notice that this was falling forward, that's because I'm on a hill and it's leaning this way. The lug nuts will pull it back in tight. Once you have the lugs on by hand, get them all snug. Use a crisscross pattern. Now I looked up the torque on this and I don't have it in front of me. But generally I just tighten them up to what feels right. Once you have them all snug, then go about tightening them up. Now it's still on the jack, but I want that wheel tight against the rotor and the hub. Now that that's fairly tight, I'm going to remove the jack stand. And I'm going to lower the jack. Now all the weight of the vehicle's on the wheel. Now I'll finish tightening it up. I could have used that electric impact wrench, but I don't have a feel for that, and I'm not sure how tight I'll be using it. But this is how I go about it. Just make sure nothing's moving on them. And that's it. All right, all that's left now is to put on that plastic hubcap. And the plastic hubcap, those plastic nuts that are on there, they screw right onto here. They stay on the cap, they don't come off. I'm going to take this out for a test ride, and if everything's okay, that'll be the end of this video. I do have another bearing for the other wheel. That one's not acting up yet, but I got a price for 2 of them, and I figure if this one's going, the other one should be changed at some point also. But before I change that other bearing, I'm going to find where I could buy those 3 bolts I had trouble with in the beginning. If anyone has purchased them before for this 2006 Saturn View, post a link down below. I could use it and somebody else might be able to use that link also. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, be sure to give it a like. Pass it along to someone else who might be able to use it. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. And be sure to hit that bell icon not to miss my videos as I upload them. This video was on the Saturn View, but my channel has a variety of videos. Sometimes some are just for fun. Other times they're on small engines or just DIY projects around the home. So I have a wide variety of videos to entertain yourself with. And until next time, stay safe.